2005. Hurricane Katrina devastates the Gulf Coast of the United States and changes the city of New Orleans forever. Pope John Paul II dies. London is rocked by a series of bombings on their public transit. A 7.6 magnitude earthquake kills more than 80,000 people in Pakistan. Cities burn in France after 3 weeks of riots. Gas prices skyrocket. Wow, not a great year. Let's find some good news. Who won the Super Bowl that year? Let's see. The Patriots over the Eagles. I give up. Well, at least 2005 was when I graduated from high school. Yay. The White Sox broke an 88-year curse with a World Series victory. The Spurs captured their third NBA title in 6 years. I had someone request me to cover the NHL also, so the Stanley Cup went to nobody. The season was canceled because of a lockout. Million Dollar Baby wins Best Picture, John Mayer wins Song of the Year for Daughters, and Tom Cruise needs to calm down. 2005 was also a year of some significant events in the theme park industry. We saw beginnings, endings, and shifts in power that would shape the industry over the last 15 years. These are the top 10 events that changed the industry from 2005. As always, the list was not quite big enough for all of the events. Here are the honorable mentions. And now for the top 10. July 29th, 2005, 6:39 p.m. California Screamin at Disney's California Adventure was running multiple trains like clockwork, as usual. One train stops where it's supposed to, but the one behind it does not. The trains bump into each other. By all means, this sounded like a minor incident. The train wasn't going very fast, and there wasn't much damage to the trains. But 15 people claimed injuries following the bump. 100 firefighters and 18 ambulances flooded the scene, treating the passengers' neck and back injuries and helping guests off the ride who could not reach the catwalks. The accident was caused by a faulty brake valve that had been installed and inspected just days before the crash. The investigation found that these valves were more prone to failure than the parts that they replaced. The state blamed Disney's maintenance, but Disney blamed the design of the valve. The original valve was produced by the ride's manufacturer, Intamin. But Disney claims that they went with a different brand because the Intamin parts were not available. Disney satisfied the state's requirements to reopen, and California Screamin was back up and running on October 14th. Waldameer is a small park that sits on the shore of Lake Erie and dates back to 1896, and it featured a wooden coaster called Ravine Flyer that operated from 1922 to 1938. Gone, but not forgotten. Waldameer had been trying to build a successor for many years prior to 2005, but kept running into problems because of litigation brought by a neighboring campground. They were concerned about noise from a new coaster and asked the ride to be built farther away from their property. After hearing the case, the Mill Creek Township approved the coaster anyway, and on March 21, 2005, an Erie County judge upheld that ruling, clearing the way for Waldameer to proceed with the Gravity Group coaster that we know today as Ravine Flyer 2. I don't know if Waldameer would have found a different location for this coaster if they needed to, but this decision allowed the park to build what would be a world-class wooden coaster that put them on the map. The delay in building Ravine Flyer 2 may have been a blessing in disguise, because this enabled them to hire a brand new company to take on the project, but we'll talk about that later. May 21st, 2005. Six Flags Great Adventure debuts the world's tallest and fastest coaster, Kingda Ka. This was basically a souped-up model of what they had introduced to Cedar Point 2 years earlier with Top Thrill Dragster, which was itself a souped-up model of the prototype accelerator coaster introduced to Knott's in 2002. This was a hydraulic launch that would take riders from 0 to 128 miles per hour in 3.5 seconds, reaching an absurd height of 456 feet. Intamin would never attempt to surpass this height in the future, and nobody else has even come close. Intamin did break their own speed record in 2010 with Formula Rossa, smashing Kingda Ka's speed by 21 miles per hour. But 15 years later, and that height record has not been touched. It seems like that was something that was being set and erased every few years from 1989 all the way up until 2005. There are some concepts out there that can top Kingda Ka and even 500 feet, but as of 2020, those are just concepts, and Kingda Ka reigns supreme. The Wisconsin Dells is a tourist destination with a lot of attractions competing for people's attention and dollars. One of the bigger ones was Big Chief Carts and Coasters, opening in 1990 and started adding some wooden coasters in the mid-90s. But in October 2004, it was announced that there would be a merger of Big Chief's, Treasure Island Water Park, and Family Land Water Park. This would now be known as Mount Olympus Water and Theme Park. The owners immediately took advantage of their new status by announcing a $10 million expansion. This would include a little bit of everything: a new go-kart track, a new water slide complex, and best of all, a massive new wooden coaster. In a town full of attractions, the single ticket admission for this growing amusement park and water park stood out above the rest. The formation of modern wooden coasters is all interconnected. Charles Dinn worked for Kings Island and was responsible for designing and building the Beast. He left to form his own company called the Dinn Corporation in 1983. This company folded in 1991, and Charles Dinn's daughter formed Custom Coasters International, or CCI. One of the original designers for CCI split off in 1994 to create Great Coasters International, or GCI. When CCI went bankrupt in 2002, 4 of their designers would create a new company called the Gravity Group. And that's where this story ties in with the year 2005. When the aforementioned Mount Olympus was looking to build a new wooden coaster as part of their $10 million expansion, they went with the people who built their other 3 wooden coasters back in the 90s. Their familiarity with CCI made them comfortable with the brand new Gravity Group, and Hades was constructed and opened for the 2005 season. Since their big break in 2005, the Gravity Group would go on to create world-class wooden coasters all over the world, including the Voyage, Cuchulainn, and that wooden coaster over at Waldameer, Ravine Flyer 2. Had they been approved to build this sooner, that project may have gone to GCI, and the ride would be totally different. Gravity Group has also introduced the Family Wooden Coaster, which has become extremely popular among smaller parks, packing big thrills in a coaster that everybody can enjoy. September 12, 2005. Thousands of people gather to see the brand new $1.8 billion park on its opening day, Hong Kong Disneyland. Disney expected the park to draw in 5.5 million guests in its first year and generate $19 billion over 40 years. Disney hoped that this would be the first step in tapping into the Chinese market. The park surpassed 1 million guests in its first 10 weeks. But the Chinese media was claiming that the park was falling short of expectations. The park had received negative press from the start, mainly from the environmental controversy of constructing the park in the first place, and also the company-wide budget cuts after the terrorist attacks of 9/11. That turned this park into a budget park. Small size, lack of attractions, and the smallest castle of any Disney park. Their expectations of 10 million guests a year would never be realized. In 2006, they didn't even bring in half that goal. Their $465 million expansion that kicked off in 2008 helped the park turn a profit for the first time in 2012. But the park has been hurt by the opening of Shanghai Disneyland in 2016, causing the park in Hong Kong to attract fewer guests from mainland China. They're currently undergoing a $1.4 billion expansion to bring this budget park up to Disney standards. But the park continues to lose money in the meantime. September 12th, 2005. The day that Hong Kong Disneyland opened its gates, Six Flags announced that one of their parks would be closing theirs. Astroworld dated back to 1968 and had been under Six Flags control since 1975. 2005 was a rocky time for Six Flags financially, and they were looking to scale way back, following the aggressive expansion and acquisitions from the last 10 years. Astroworld's attendance was declining, and the park never benefited from the coaster revolution of 1999 to 2001, receiving just a relocated Schwarzkopf Looper and a Vekoma SLC in 1998 and 1999. Six Flags had to decide whether to make the investments necessary to upgrade this park and add new attractions, or sell the park. Given their financial problems and their need to raise cash, they went with the option to sell the park to the highest bidder, which were real estate developers. Six Flags thought that they were going to get $150 million from the sale, but only got $77 million after spending $20 million to clear the park. This debacle was a major factor in Six Flags ousting CEO Kieran Burke in favor of Mark Shapiro. Another reason for the park's closure was the fight over off-site parking rights for the Houston Texans Stadium and the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. And to this day, the plot of land where Astroworld once stood is a vacant grassland that is being used for overflow parking for the rodeo. The park would shut its gates forever on October 30th, 2005. August 29th, 2005. Hurricane Katrina slams into New Orleans, causing 53 breaches to the city's flood protection structures and flooding 80% of the city. This included Six Flags New Orleans, a new amusement park that had just opened its gates in 2000 and was acquired by Six Flags in 2002. As I mentioned before with the sale of Astroworld, this was a bad time for Six Flags to take the financial hit of rebuilding the park. But their 75-year lease with the city of New Orleans required them to rebuild the park in the event of damage. And the initial word from Six Flags is that this was their intention. But the park sat under 4 to 7 feet of water for over a month, and Six Flags determined that the park was 80% destroyed beyond repair. Six Flags estimated that the storm caused $32.5 million of damage, but only received 1/3 of the insurance money after a year passed. They tried to negotiate out of their lease with the city, but the mayor wanted to hold them to their commitment. They had to rebuild the park with the insurance money that they received. As of 2009, and the time of their bankruptcy, Six Flags was still negotiating with the insurance companies. The park would be left abandoned. August 26th, 2005. As Hurricane Katrina was barreling down on the Gulf Coast, Six Flags announced that they would be taking offers from third parties to buy the company. This all came from Dan Snyder and his Red Zone Holdings company acquiring support from the majority of the stockholders to cut the head off Six Flags and assume control of the company. Whoever purchased the Six Flags chain would need to address the cash flow problem. There wasn't much revenue to be had. This was a chain of parks that relied on selling cheap season passes to teenagers, and were only open half of the year with no city walk or no downtown Disney style area to bring in more revenue. Several companies took a look, including Cedar Fair, who had just taken Worlds of Adventure off Six Flags' hands the year prior. The chain would never be sold, but the turmoil led to major change. Snyder's Red Zone Holdings company gained control of the board in November. Shapiro replaced Burke as CEO, and they revamped their board of directors, which did include Harvey Weinstein. Oh boy. The new management team would continue to raise cash by selling off parks over the next couple years before having to file for bankruptcy in 2009. Around the same time that Hong Kong Disneyland was about to open, Disney was having some serious financial problems. This is when the company forced CEO Michael Eisner to an early retirement and promoted Disney president and COO Bob Iger to take over. Disney had been falling behind in the movie industry, so Iger set out to buy the competition. This started with the company directly infringing on their animated movie market, Pixar, with a $7.4 billion buyout in 2006. He continued with a $4 billion purchase of Marvel in 2009, another $4 billion to purchase the rights of Star Wars in 2012, and finally, $71.3 billion to buy 21st Century Fox in 2019. This showed that Iger was not afraid to spend money to make money. The same thing would apply to Disney parks. When he took over, Disney's California Adventure, Disneyland Paris, and Hong Kong Disneyland were all falling short of expectations, and it was mainly blamed on Michael Eisner's budget. The quality was not up to Disney standards. Bob Iger kicked off a 5-year investment into California Adventure that saw the addition of Toy Story Midway Mania as well as Cars Land, featuring the $200 million masterpiece, Radiator Springs Racers. Hong Kong Disneyland was then set to expand 25%, the massive investments that finally made the park profitable and set it on a promising course for the future. Disneyland Paris also received the trackless dark ride Ratatouille in 2014. Iger was aggressive with getting Shanghai Disneyland off the ground, a project that he had been working on for almost 2 decades that he finally saw realized in 2016. Iger's reign has also seen the addition of expensive and cutting-edge rides like Flight of Passage at Animal Kingdom, Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland and Disney World, which feature a Rise of the Resistance, as well as the addition of 3 Avengers campuses coming to their parks soon. Iger just stepped down from his post earlier this year, but his philosophy of spending money to make money has made the Disney parks so much better. That's a wrap for 2005. Let me know in the comments below what you think was the most important theme park event of 2005, and what you may have rearranged on this list. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.